Discover the amazing moment a Hell's Angel exposed hidden kindness when they mocked a disabled girl. Jake felt the sun burn through the clouds as he pushed Lily's wheelchair along the dusty path of the rundown park. The laughter of children echoed around him, a familiar melody that once filled his days with joy. Aesthetic memories blurred as he compared this dilapidated playground to the vibrant one from his childhood. Every creaking swing and rusted slide was infested with ghosts of opportunity lost. The happiness he had promised Mary now felt as estranged as the burden of their bills piling high on the kitchen counter. "Can I dance, Daddy?" Lily's eyes sparkled with hope. She longed for the open patch of grass, a stage meant only for her youthful spirit. The thought of her pirouetting gave him a fleeting taste of the comfort he desperately sought. In that moment, joy bubbled against the backdrop of his unending guilt. What kind of father denies his daughter this moment? "Okay, sweetheart," he murmured, a hesitant smile crawling across his lips. He wheeled her closer to the open patch, fighting the sense of dread that clung to him like a second skin. Before they could inhale the euphoria, the ground trembled under the roar of engines. Hell's Angels stormed in, their bikes echoing like rebellious thunder through the park. Jake's heart sank further into his chest. They were the very embodiment of lost control, brash and chaotic. And just like that, the sanctuary he hoped for was eclipsed by a looming storm. As Lily worked up the courage to dance, her spirit radiated warmth that contrasted sharply with the harsh glares of the bikers. Just moments before, laughter had filled her innocent heart. Now, the raucous jeers of leather-clad strangers pierced through the air like daggers. "Look at that girl! Thinks she can float or something?" a biker howled. Another joined in with mock applause. Jake's body stiffened. He felt that familiar surge of heat rising up through his neck, a visceral reaction that anchored his shame deeper. How could he protect her? He glanced at Lily, her joy fizzing like soda in the wake of their laughter. Confusion spread over her face. Was he still the hero she thought he was? Before he could spiral further, a rough voice cut through the cacophony. It was Harlan, a veteran among bikers. His presence seemed to split the crowd, and for a heartbeat, reality paused. "Back off," he barked, his voice raw and heavy with the weight of his own scars. The gang fell silent, their bravado wavering. Lily continued to dance, oblivious to the storm brewing. Jake found himself caught between Harlan's sudden shift towards compassion and the uncomfortable truth of his own inadequacies crashing around him. Would he hold Harlan's gaze and press for respect over this gang's mockery, or retreat back into the shadows of his failures? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Jake's mind raced. Should he connect with Harlan and possibly find solace or a friend in this chaos? Yet, his heart swelled with fury, not just for his daughter, but for all he had lost. And just as tensions reached a breaking point, the gang's leader demanded Harlan choose: loyalty to their reckless lifestyle, or the chance to join Jake in defending the girl who deserved to dance, even amidst chaos. In that split second, every ounce of rage and love swirled inside him, waiting for an answer that could either save a daughter's dream or condemn a father to failure. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Harlan's commanding presence hung in the air, a lifeline that could either sever the malicious energy of the gang or plunge him deeper into despair. The growling engines had subsided, but a different kind of tension had taken their place, one that pitted fear against fleeting courage. "Get out of the way, Harlan," the gang leader spat, eyes glinting with contempt. "You don't know what you're getting into." Jake's breath caught.
He felt like a marionette strung between two puppeteers, one representing the unyielding expectations of masculinity, the other the ways he could protect his daughter without succumbing to violence. What kind of man would he be if he remained silent? If he let them tear into her joy, her innocence? "Don't you dare speak to him like that!" Jake's voice erupted, surprising even himself. It was raw, as if every suppressed fear had finally found its outlet. As all heads turned and the taunting roars dulled, he took a half-step closer to Harlan, strengthened by a desperate resolve. "She's just a girl, wanting to dance and be happy. Why is that so hard for you to accept?" The sudden shift caught the gang off guard. Harlan turned to Jake, an expression of curiosity flickering in his eyes. The defiance that surged through Jake had cracked open a door to something raw and unguarded, something Harlan seemed to recognize. But before he could process that, the leader stepped closer, muscles taut, eyes narrowing as he sized up the threat that Jake now posed. "You think you can shame us into submission?" the leader grumbled, his bravado slipping. "You really believe you can just stand here and—" "Watch her dance, yeah," Jake interjected, his desperation fueling a need to stand firm. "That's what she deserves, not your ridicule." There was something liberating in his defiance. He felt chains breaking as he embodied a truth he had buried in himself. Lily twirled. In her chair, limbs moving as best as they could, exuding a shimmer of innocence that even the toughest character seemed powerless against. But for every soft spin she made, Jake could feel the tension among the bikers tighten like a noose around his resolve. Harlan shifted his stance, eyes wavering between the defiance of the gang and the allure of Lily's joy. The shift was almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes in the noise of uncertainty. Who was he to give up his place? It was the fleeting thought of a man grappling with eternal loyalty against the ineffable desire for change. The silence stretched long, and time felt both painfully slow and achingly fast. Jake's focus shifted back to Harlan, studying the creases of hesitation on the older man's face. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment he would see reason. "Let her dance," Harlan finally murmured, the weight of authority in his baritone voice piercing through the gang's pent-up laughter. "If we're going to fight today, it's not going to be with a little girl's happiness on display." The air grew thick, and Jake held his breath, heart racing. Had Harlan really made the choice? Everything hung in the balance, a precarious ebb of possibility amidst laughter that had turned from mockery to something else entirely. "You're making a mistake, Harlan," the gang leader hissed, fists clenching. "Maybe," Harlan shot back, "but some things are worth the fight." As a flicker of understanding passed between the two men, Jake felt the tide shifting. But would it hold? He steadied his resolve, but the world around him was still fraught with danger. Behind the tension, hidden in the shadows, he felt his journey was just beginning. Stripped of the facade he'd worn for so long, Jake now faced not only the bikers, but also the daunting truth of his fatherhood. He needed to show up, not only for Lily, but for himself. In that charged moment, he knew he had finally found his voice, but the road to redemption was long and fraught with uncertainty. As Lily spun around again, joy radiating from her like the sun breaking through storm clouds, Jake glanced at Harlan, who had just made the first step towards something he never expected. Would this interlude lead to genuine transformation, or would the chase continue? The question lingered as Jake prepared himself for whatever confrontation lay ahead, knowing he could no longer back down. The stakes had just been raised, and he would have to fight to hold on to the precious moment of happiness for Lily before darkness encroached again. Jake's heart thudded against his ribcage as the tension shifted. Harlan had made a move, but it felt fleeting, a bubble that could burst at any moment. He turned his gaze to Lily, her innocent delight igniting a protective flame within him. Every twirl she executed was an assertion of life, a stark contrast to the darkness that loomed just beyond their makeshift sanctuary. "Stand."
"Your ground," he reminded himself, a quiet mantra that sliced through his fear. He needed to adapt, to grow beyond the limitations imposed on him by his surroundings. It was time to harness this unexpected strength, to leverage the momentary truce into something more significant, something that could expose the latent goodness in Harlan, the bikers, and even himself. "Lily, keep dancing," he said, his voice soft but firm, gaining steadiness from the joy radiating off her delicate frame. Her laughter filled the air, an antidote to the grim atmosphere, and he felt the gang members' hostility wane, if only slightly. Harlan stood, a lone figure caught between competing loyalties. Jake could almost see the gears turning in the older man's mind. This was not just a fight for today, it was a fight for the future he hadn't known he wanted. Beneath the hardened exterior, Jake sensed a flicker of empathy awakening in Harlan, redirected by a girl who danced with abandon despite her circumstances. "Why would you protect a kid like her?" the gang leader sneered, breaking the moment's fragile reverie. "She's just a freak show." Jake felt a surge of anger and protectiveness swell within. It was time to deepen the confrontation, to illuminate both his own resolve and Harlan's potential for change. "She's not a freak show," he shot back, emboldened by the realization of all he stood for. "She's a reminder of joy in this grim world, something you can't seem to grasp." The gang leader bristled at the challenge, and for a moment Jake feared he might provoke a violent reaction. But Harlan's eyes locked onto Jake's with a penetrating intensity that suggested this was a pivotal moment. They shared a silent acknowledgement that something deeper was at stake, their own humanity. "Lily deserves to be celebrated, not shamed," Jake continued, heat rising in his chest, buoyed by the weight of his own truth. "You may not see her as anything special, but I do. And it's time you all took a good look at what true strength is." Harlan's gaze flickered between Jake and the gang leader, the air charged with the tension of his internal battle. Could he choose to embrace this moment? Would he allow change to unfurl before him? The gang held their breath, eyes darting back and forth like they were watching a high-stakes standoff. "Why do you care so much?" Harlan finally rumbled, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his rough exterior. "What makes you fight like this?" Jake's mind raced. It was more than simply being a father. It was about creating a legacy worth fighting for. "Because she's my daughter," he declared, voice steadying with every syllable. "And if you can find kindness in your heart, it might just save you, just like it has saved me." In that moment, he had laid bare the truth of his vulnerability. It was a raw confession of love and hope, a reckoning of the man he aspired to be versus the figure the world demanded of him. Would it reach Harlan's hardened heart? The silence that ensued felt thick and electrifying, and Jake held on to his resolve like a lifeline. Each second stretched into an eternity as Harlan processed the weight of Jake's words. "Maybe," Harlan said slowly, his voice dropping to a softer timbre, "maybe you've got a point." The gang leader's muscles tensed again, and the other bikers exchanged uncertain glances. Would Harlan stand firm on this newfound path of compassion? Or would he retreat, allowing fear to redirect the course back toward violence? Jake glanced at Lily, still spinning in joyous oblivion. That moment of innocence hung in the air, begging for protection amidst chaos. He tightened his grip on his inner strength as the battle raged within Harlan. The stakes had risen, and with them, Jake understood his own mission went beyond just being a defender. He had to guide them all towards transformation, even if it meant standing alone. And with that thought, uncertainty lingered. What actions would follow this fragile moment of kindness? And could he trust Harlan not to retreat into darkness? As the tension mounted, Jake prepared for whatever came next, knowing the true conflict was only beginning.
Jake's breath quickened as he locked eyes with Harlan, the unspoken challenge hanging thick in the air. Could this hardened man truly embrace the potential for change? The weight of the moment pressed on him, as if time itself had conspired to draw out the inevitable clash of wills. He sensed the gang's collective anticipation, their loyalties balanced precariously on the edge of this verbal duel. "Think about it," Jake pushed, seizing the moment. "What are you really fighting for? Power? Respect? What does any of that mean when you can't protect what truly matters?" His voice carried a fervor that surprised even him. He was digging deeper, drawing from a well of resolve he never knew existed. Harlan's brow furrowed, uncertainty shadowing his rugged features. "You're talking about a world I've never known," he replied, the words heavy with doubt. Yet Jake could see cracks forming in the walls that surrounded the man's heart, the tension in his posture momentarily easing. "The world you know is built on fear," Jake said, stepping closer, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "But we have the chance to build something different, something strong. It all starts here." The bikers shifted, their apprehension palpable, but Jake remained focused on Harlan. What was it that transformed men like this? Could he be the catalyst for that change? One glimpse of humanity in Harlan could ripple through the gang like a tidal wave. Jake felt the urgency. It was now or never. Suddenly, a low scoff erupted from one of the gang members, breaking the fragile connection they shared. "You think your words will change him?" The derision was thick and mocking, sending a shiver of doubt through the crowd. Jake steeled himself, realizing they still saw him as a defiant outsider. He needed to demonstrate that their camaraderie could be redefined. "Change is never easy," Jake replied, brushing off the naysayer's scorn. "But it starts with the choice to see value in each other." He gestured toward Lily, who spun amidst a tempest of emotions, blissfully unaware of the potential crisis surrounding her. "She isn't just a burden or a joke, she's a light. Letting that light shine could change everything." Harlan's gaze softened, a flicker of recognition igniting within him. "You don't know what it's like," he challenged, but there was less conviction in his tone. "You don't know these guys. They'll never follow a path like this." "Maybe," Jake conceded, the fight within him boiling over. "But you're not just one of them. You're better than this." It was a dare, a challenge, laced with the kind of hope that felt almost sacrilegious amidst their violent world. This was no simplistic message. It was a call to arms for something intangible yet potent: redemption. Receiving no answer, Harlan fidgeted, his heavy brow reflecting the conflict raging within. Jake could no longer wonder if Harlan would accept this version of himself. He had to push further. "If they follow you, what do you want to lead them into? Fear and hatred, or a team forged by mutual respect?" Harlan's eyes narrowed as he weighed the stakes. Would he continue to be the man defined by loyalty to a vicious legacy, or would he step into a more daunting role, one that demanded vulnerability and compassion? The silence deepened, stretching out like an elastic band ready to snap. Jake's chest tightened, not only with apprehension, but also with determination. He could sense Harlan's conflict reaching a boiling point. Would he fracture under pressure, retreating back into the shadows of his own making? Or could he emerge into the light? "Leave her out of this," Harlan finally said, clenching his fists. "You want me to change? What about these guys?" He motioned to his bikers, who were watching the exchange with expressions he could no longer read. The scene felt like a stage set for a dramatic climax. Jake realized it had moved beyond just his fight. It echoed the battle within Harlan, yet it also had the potential to destroy something far deeper, the gang's destructive identity. "Does it matter?" Jake answered, refusing to back down. "It's not too late to rewrite your story, together. You want to protect what matters? Let these guys see the real strength in kindness. It will mean so much more than fear ever could." As Harlan hesitated, Jake's heart raced, a mixture of hope and dread coursing through him. The moment teetered on the brink. Everything hinged on this exchange. Would Harlan take the plunge toward change, or would he choose the comfortable shackles of the past? Jake felt the atmosphere electric with possibility, transformative and terrifying in equal measure. "What will you decide?" he dared to ask. The question hung like a portent in the air, waiting.
To tip the balance toward revelation or destruction. Harlan's eyes flickered in defiance, yet behind that intrigue lay remnants of vulnerability. For a moment, his hardened exterior wavered, and Jake could sense the shifting winds of change. Could he push further, drawing out what lingered beneath Harlan's gruff facade? "Respect isn't earned through intimidation," Jake pressed, his voice steady but firm. "It's fostered in understanding." The shifting expressions of the gang members spoke volumes. Some were contemplating, others were resistant, but the air pulsed with uncharted potential. Harlan scoffed, a feeble attempt to mask the emergence of doubt. "You think this is some fairy tale? You really believe kindness will change a man like me or them?" He gestured to his gang, and in the executed motion, Jake sensed a flicker of something deeper, a plea for change masked in bravado. "It changes everything," Jake countered boldly. "You fought so hard for power, yet in this fight, power is nothing without compassion. You want them to respect you? Show them the side of you that cares. Show them you can lead by uniting, not dividing." Harlan faltered, his clenched fists trembling with uncertainty. Jake had crossed a line. Confidence surged as he realized Harlan's walls were fragile, tethered to a past that might no longer fit. For the first time, Jake considered what Harlan might gain by being vulnerable, experimenting with trust rather than control. "Why would they follow me into that?" Harlan's voice was softer now, infused with a hesitation that hadn't been there before. The bikers shifted again, some whispering among themselves, confusion and curiosity etched in their expressions. "Because they look up to you," Jake responded, measuring his words, each one a rallying cry to sheer possibility. "You've led them through fear, Harlan, but what if you led them through something greater? Imagine being the man who inspires loyalty because of respect, not fear. A man who rises above the legacy handed to him and reshapes it." Flashes of uncertainty danced across Harlan's features, a chaotic whirlwind of thoughts and potential futures he hadn't entertained. Jake chose that moment to share a glimpse of his own story, the struggles he faced breaking into a world that once felt impenetrable. "I was an outsider too," he admitted, his voice thick with honesty. "But with each small act of kindness, I found my footing. I could have sunk back into silence, but I chose to step forward. It was terrifying, but I discovered a new purpose. That's what can happen for you and them." The silence grew heavier, amplifying the risk now nestled between them. Harlan's tight-drawn expression wavered as he wrestled with the implications of what it meant to shift from fear to courage. Behind the hulking silhouette of a seemingly indomitable biker, Jake sensed the stirrings of hope, a flicker of humanity trapped beneath layers of learned hostility. "Caring takes guts," Harlan muttered, almost inaudibly, as his gaze flicked to the faces of his fellow bikers, each one bearing the weight of his legacy. Every glance was questioning, almost suspecting. Would they still see him as a leader if he chose this uncertain path? "More guts than any brawl you've ever fought," Jake affirmed, "and it defines true strength. Lead them from here." In that charged space, moments crystallized, and Jake realized that this wasn't a battle for Harlan's heart alone. It was a crucible meant for them all. But before anything could coalesce, a murmur rose within the ranks of bikers, a ripple of dissent, fragmenting the budding connection. Jake's pulse quickened. "Why should we be any different?" one of them spat, channeling the chorus of skepticism. "That's weakness." Harlan blinked, the flickering flame of hope suddenly threatened by the familiar specter of opposition. Despite Jake's fervent urgings, fear clawed at Harlan, threatening to pull him back. Jake sensed the precarious balance tipping. Would Harlan retreat into his old identity, defined by defiance and rebellion, or would he choose to embrace something new? The answer blinked before them, poised to either ignite a transformative revolution or extinguish the possibility forever. "It's the only way forward," Jake said, desperation creeping into his voice, knowing it was now or never. Would Harlan rise, or would fear chain him again? The tension surged, the space vast with consequences, neither one ready to unravel what lay ahead. What decision would Harlan make when faced with the hard truth of his own legacy? The atmosphere throbbed with an electric tension as Harlan stood immobilized, wrestling with his past and the uncertain road ahead. The dividing line between the man he was and the man he could be shimmered like a mirage before him. Jake could almost taste the desperation wafting from his mentor, an intoxicating blend of fear and hope, fear of what it meant to change, and hope that perhaps change was finally possible. Harlan's gaze darted around the group, landing on one biker after another, each face a tableau of conflict. They were desperate for direction, yet entrenched in learned behavior. The moment could fracture or bridge their collective understanding, and he was the fulcrum. Sweat beaded at his temples as he recognized the challenge to be not just a personal one, but one demanding a revolution in identity, a reshaping of everything he stood for. "Every decision we make defines who we are," Jake pressed, his voice imbued with urgency. "What do you want this legacy to be? Fear or something bigger?" Harlan's jaw tightened as he absorbed the implications. The question wasn't merely about loyalty or fear, but about self-actualization. His legacy loomed like a statue chiseled from stone, and he stood before the sculptor's blade, ready to carve history anew. His thoughts spiraled toward the essence of his own identity. Was he bound to history, or was it time to become a creator of his destiny? A sudden holler erupted from a veteran biker to his right, slicing through the thickening tension. "You're saying we just let things slide, be nice, and that's it?"
"It won't change anything." There was disdain in the tone that ricocheted through the group, every member leaning in, curious, split between loyalty to their leader and the prickling disdain for Jake's ideals. Jake's aspirations morphed into an internal battle. He had pulled the curtain, exposing the delicate threads of possibility intertwined with dread. "No," he countered, refusing to yield. "It takes initiative, it takes fortitude." And right there, that word hung in the air, fortitude. Harlan sighed, reflecting on his own brutal upbringing. Indeed, fortitude had always been tied to the grit of surviving in a rough world. Perhaps it wasn't all misplaced belief after all. Maybe cultivating kindness could meld with strength rather than diminish it. Harlan's chest tightened as a wave of shared memories washed over him. He recalled a girl from the neighborhood, a girl whose laughter had been stunted by her disability. Everyone had whispered, but he had stood by her, offering scraps of friendship in an unkind world. "It's not weakness," he murmured, almost to himself. "It could be the strongest thing we do." A shift began to ripple through the onlookers as Harlan's voice stirred recognition of a deeper truth. Unity born from understanding was infinitely more powerful than unity born from fear. The physical postures among the bikers began to change. Heads turned and murmurs of agreement ignited. "Maybe we could try it," Harlan suggested, urgency now merging with resolve. "But it'll take all of you to make it happen. What do you say?" The challenge was clear, a call to arms, not through violence, but through compassion. Jake's heart raced as the crowd buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't merely Harlan's moment, it was a collective chance. They could redefine their legacy and challenge every preconceived notion they harbored. Hope propelled him forward, filling the air between them with an unyielding intensity. Among the murmurs arose the familiar voice of dissent, but this time it bore less conviction, resonating more like the last gasp of uncertainty. "Fine, let's hear it. Show us what this kindness looks like." Harlan straightened, a flicker of the fierce warrior sparking to life in his posture. It was a calling, one he wanted to embrace. But Jake glimpsed a newfound fear behind Harlan's resolute facade, a fear of failure, not from the gang, but from himself. The risk that their attempts could fall flat and further entrench their identity in shame. As the murmurs coalesced into something more tangible, a sudden noise cut through the palpable anticipation. The door swung open with a jarring crash, and a figure stumbled in. Disbelief set in as eyes widened, the moment subverted by an unexpected arrival, an old rival seeking revenge. Harlan's expression froze, caught between two worlds pulling at him fiercely, potential and retribution. How would he respond under the weight of this challenge? Would he revert to old habits or embody the change he had begun to embrace? With hearts pounding and tension soaring, the impending clash intertwined with newfound purpose, leaving the
outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Adrenaline coursed through Harlan as he locked eyes with the figure entering the room. The straggler's silhouette was hauntingly familiar, a specter from a past he thought he had buried. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a confrontation with everything he had tried to escape. His rival, the embodiment of past traumas and unresolved anger, now threatening to unravel his budding transformation. The hazy echoes of old conflicts flooded Harlan's mind, and he wrestled with memories of aggression, bitter rivalries, and harsh lessons learned in the unforgiving streets. He had long sought to be more than the hardened persona forged in fire and pain, yet here stood his mirror, challenging that very evolution. The crowd's reactions were instantaneous, a palpable shift in energy as they sensed the electric tension igniting the atmosphere. "Just when I thought you'd gone soft, Harlan," the rival sneered, his words dripping with disdain. "You think a little kindness can wash away years of blood and betrayal?" Harlan's heart quickened, and he felt the skepticism of the gathered bikers weighing heavy on his shoulders. This was not just about his personal evolution, it was about the group observing their leader grappling with the question of whether he would fold under pressure or rise to the occasion. "Kindness is strength," Harlan replied, his voice steady but strained. "It's a shield, not a crutch. I'm done playing the part of the thug. You want revenge? You think that's power? Look at what that has bred in both of us." His eyes searched the rival's face, seeing echoes of his own pain reflected back at him. The rival scoffed, brushing off Harlan's words. But Harlan pressed on, determination fortifying his resolve. He needed to show that he wasn't retreating into the shadows of his past. This was a defining moment, not only for himself, but for all who looked up to him. "All these years we fought because we wouldn't allow ourselves to trust anything other than fear. I'm done. We're better than that." The words reverberated in the silence, instilling a strange sense of disbelief in the onlookers. Suddenly, Harlan's perspective shifted. Instead of retreating to a history of violence, he envisioned extending his hand, embracing vulnerability as power. The weight of expectation hung like a crystal chandelier, demanding he deliver a message of action, a demonstration of this new philosophy. Drawing on the resolve he had nurtured in recent days, Harlan took a step closer to the rival. He felt Jake's presence behind him, an unspoken support urging him onward. "I'm inviting you to learn alongside me," he continued, his words flowing with unexpected sincerity. "A real man understands that it takes more strength to create than to destroy." Laughter erupted from the rival, a bitter sound that sliced through Harlan's momentum. Yet Harlan remained steadfast.
The moment was palpable. He had to either retreat or dig deeper. What he did next would define not just this confrontation, but his entire path. "I'll prove it," he stated, the resolve in his voice gathering momentum. His mind raced. What did it mean to truly live this lesson? How about a challenge? Let's put your bravado to the test. Let's see who can effect more change within this crew. Someone who's too proud to change, or someone who embraces a better legacy? The tension thickened. The bikers visibly stirred, weighing the implications of Harlan's bold proclamation. Jake felt a mixture of anxiety and pride as he watched his mentor wrestle with fear. Harlan's willingness to risk everything was a gamble, a real test of his commitment to transformation. What choice would this rival make? Would he engage or retreat, allowing the heavy chains of animosity and pride to bind him? Harlan's heart pounded in his chest, unsure of the outcome, but resolute that whatever happened next could forge an entirely new legacy, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever felt trapped in a cycle of violence. As all eyes fixed on the rival, the atmosphere hummed with possibilities. Harlan realized this moment was about more than him. It was a turning point, a test of courage and conviction that demanded a response. The world held its breath as he awaited the choice that could either reignite an old feud or ignite an entirely new path forward. Would the rival accept the challenge, or would he circumvent this newfound trail towards redemption? With the stakes escalating, Harlan's journey was far from over. What would he uncover about himself in this fray? Harlan stood in a charged silence, each second stretched like an ultimatum. His rival, the specter of his past, studied him, uncertainty flickering across his hardened face. This standoff had become more than just a confrontation. It was a battlefield of ideologies, a test of whether old grievances could be laid to rest. The rival's eyes glinted with a mix of incredulity and defiance. "You really think you can change anything? This place thrives on the blood of its enemies, not on some fairy tale of kindness." His voice dripped with a condescension Harlan had known all too well. The surrounding bikers shifted, a living wall of raised eyebrows and crossed arms. Harlan could sense the weight of their expectations. They were watching, waiting to see if he would fall back into the familiar role of the violent enforcer, or push forward as a beacon of transformation. Deep down, he grappled with his own insecurities. What if the rival was right? Sometimes the hardest battles are those fought within ourselves. Harlan countered, feeling the heat of his own words. Each syllable rose from a place of deep reflection. He was no longer just standing before a rival. He was confronting his own past choices, his own demons. "I'm not asking you to believe in it overnight, but let's make this a real challenge. Let's see who can bring out the best in this crew." The rival's laughter echoed like a gunshot through the air. "Bring out the best? What do you have, Harlan? A handful of hugs and a motivational speech? You're dreaming." Harlan fought to keep his composure, the urge to lash out clawing at him. He wanted to unleash the anger that simmered just below the surface, but he understood that response held no power. Reverting to aggression would only reinforce the very message his rival stood for. His heart raced with the weight of decision. There lay an opportunity before him, not just for growth, but for a demonstration of his philosophy. "If you're scared of a change, then you're more trapped than I ever was. That's not strength, that's weakness." Each word was a stone cast into uncertain waters, rippling through the crowd and transforming tension into curiosity. The rival's face darkened. "You're playing with fire, Harlan. If this backfires, you'll regret underestimating me." "In that case," Harlan replied, steadying his breath, "let's put it to the test. A month. You lead your way, and I'll lead mine. Whoever brings more members to the table at the end wins. No intimidation, no vengeance. Just change."
Eyes widened. The bikers shifted, murmurs spreading like wildfire. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a moment that tested authority, tested their faith in Harlan's vision for a new path forged through mutual respect rather than fear. For a heartbeat, the rival hesitated, the door to redemption swinging open on creaky hinges. Harlan's heart thundered as he sensed a shift beneath the surface, a glimmer of possibility. "Deal," the rival finally spat, "but don't think for a second I won't bring the heat." The challenge was set, the gauntlet thrown down. Harlan's heart raced, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. This was far more than just a personal confrontation. It was an opportunity to dismantle a legacy built on animosity and replace it with something concrete and lasting. As the tension subsided, Harlan could feel the weight of the upcoming month and the accountability it imposed, looming large. Would he truly be able to transform not only himself but those around him? And somewhere deep within, a nagging doubt stirred. What if his best was still not enough? The voice of his past echoed ominously, reminding him of every failure, every moment he had underestimated the power of fear. The challenge beckoned, its implications vast and nebulous. Harlan stood on the precipice of something transformative, unaware that hidden within the challenge was a revelation that would irrevocably alter his path. What would he unearth about his strengths and his vulnerabilities as he stepped into this new battleground of leadership? Would the change he sought reveal itself, or would the shadows of his past consume him once more? As determination settled in, Harlan stared into the unknown, aware that the journey had only just begun. Harlan woke early the next morning, a rush of adrenaline still coursing through his veins. The sun crept over the horizon, casting a golden light that turned the ordinary into extraordinary.
A fleeting moment, he felt optimistic, but the weight of his challenge pressed on him, a constant reminder of the task ahead. He took a deep breath, his mind a battlefield of doubt and determination. What kind of leader did he want to be? As remnants of the previous night's confrontation echoed in his head, he knew he had to define not just his actions, but his values. He had thrown down a gauntlet, but would he be a warrior of cooperation or conflict? While the others stirred in their slumber, he took to the open road, his bike roaring to life beneath him. As he gripped the handlebars, the rushing wind felt like a purging of old fears. Each mile he rode seemed to strip away layers of self-doubt, revealing a sense of purpose. Arriving at a local cafe, Harlan ordered black coffee and reflected on his plan. Each day would require strategy. He needed a way to demonstrate transformation, not just talk about it. The idea of weekly gatherings slowly formed in his mind, a space where ideas could flourish without judgment. He envisioned a round table, no hierarchy, where they could explore ways to reshape their community and themselves. However, beneath the surface, a flicker of skepticism dimmed his bright vision. Could he truly retrieve loyalty from a pack of wolves? His rival had made it clear that intimidation was their currency, and the echoes of laughter from the previous night rang louder than his optimistic musings. Sipping his coffee, Harlan noticed a group of kids across the street. They were gathered around a local girl in a wheelchair, her inability to move freely rendering her vulnerable to ridicule. A couple of teens nearby jested, mocking her laughter. Harlan's gut twisted, his internal conflict igniting within him. He wrestled with his instincts. Would stepping in be an act of kindness, or merely a distraction from his own challenges? Life had conditioned him to absorb cruelty, to respond with anger. Yet there, in front of him, lay an opportunity for something more. Bravery was just as often found in compassion as it was in confrontation. Drawing a deep breath, Harlan parked his motorcycle and walked over. His heart raced, awareness heightening as he approached the group. "Hey, why don't we not treat her as less than us?" he began, his voice steady but firm. "She deserves respect, just like everyone else."
The laughter diminished, replaced by surprised faces. He had crossed a line, exposing himself to potential ridicule, but in that moment he felt clarity. Taking a few more steps closer, he offered the girl a smile. "What's your name?" "Ella," she replied, her sincere gaze managing to penetrate the thick band of tension. As the conversation unfolded, Harlan found himself weaving a web of connection, a contrast to the familiar ethos of bravado surrounding him. He learned that Ella loved to draw, her artistic talents lying in her imagination instead of her physical limitations. In sharing her passion, she lit
Up, a spark igniting in the middle of an atmosphere that threatened to extinguish hope. For Harlan, this exchange was a revelation. He had often viewed leadership through the lens of authority, but he now perceived it as an opportunity for connection. The value of empathy and the strength found in solidarity shifted his perspective. A new plan formed, one that emphasized vulnerability over aggression. As he rejoined the bikers later that day, the interactions with Ella, both challenging and uplifting, infused him with renewed purpose. The road ahead would not be easy. The rival would not simply relent for the sake of change. He needed to infuse his crew with this newfound philosophy, to extend the compassion he cultivated forward. But as he settled into the growing camaraderie, the shadows of his rival's disdain loomed large. Would this new approach resonate, or would it be met with contempt? The impending competition loomed in the back of his mind, but so too did the nascent realization that transformation often begins with a single act of kindness. Preparing for the next move, he understood success was not defined by the number of bikers who followed him, but by the strength of the bonds he was willing to cultivate in the process. A transformation awaited him, both in himself and within the crew. As Harlan fixed his gaze into the distance, he braced himself. The challenge had only begun, and unknown trials lurked ahead. Could he maintain this approach in the face of hostility? Would the shadows of his past threaten to undermine the light he sought to cultivate? The answers loomed tantalizingly close, yet painfully elusive. Harlan awoke in a haze, the sunlight streaming through the curtains a vivid reminder of the promise he had made, to lead his crew toward a new legacy. The challenge he had set for himself loomed large, yet it was not just a personal journey. It had transformed into a shared mission for anything greater than himself. The weight of uncertainty was heavy, but deep down he felt a spark of unwavering determination. That day marked the beginning of his focus, not merely on winning the allegiance of his fellow bikers, but on cultivating a life defined by compassion. He envisioned the week ahead as an invitation, a series of small gatherings intended to foster a sense of community, stripping away the old layers of division and animosity. Those initial meetings would serve as a platform for dialogue rather than a battlefield of egos. As he pulled his bike into the familiar local haunt, he felt the excitement mingle with trepidation. Would they embrace this shift toward understanding, or would they see his attempts as weakness? Deep breaths steadied him as he entered, greeted by a mix of skeptical stares and curious eyes. But before he could question his resolve, the prospect of unity, of exposing the tenderness buried beneath their hardened exteriors, drove him forward. "Listen up!" Harlan called, his voice resonating across the room. Heads turned, expressions shifting from disbelief
to intrigue. I know we've relied on fear and chaos, but I'm challenging us to explore something different. I want us to meet regularly. This isn't about threats or power. It's about connection. We have a choice to reshape our legacy. The silence that followed felt monumental, heavy with the weight of history and anticipation of change. A couple of the bikers exchanged nervous glances, but the hum of curiosity replaced animosity. Harlan sensed a door cracking open. This was not just a dream. It pulsed with the potential for change. Weeks passed, and with each meeting, Harlan encouraged his crew to be vulnerable, to share their stories and fears. They sat in a circle, words flowing more freely than any past gatherings had allowed.
Each confession of hardship and hope chipped away at the dividing walls built over years of turmoil. Harlan witnessed the transformation manifest in their sense of solidarity. For the first time, they were not just a gang bound by fear. They formed a community woven through shared experiences. As the days turned into weeks, the rivals still loomed. Harlan remembered their shared history, and while there was still a flicker of doubt, each successful gathering reinforced the momentum of his mission. He absorbed the triumph that came from shifting the narrative. The bonds his crew formed transcended expectations. Vulnerability fostered a newfound respect that changed the air around them. On the final day of the month, Harlan was ready to meet his rival. The atmosphere felt charged, alive with the determination to define a new chapter. He stood tall, flanked by those who had once surrendered to hostility, but now embodied a shared purpose. Among them was Ella, who had become a symbol of hope, an inspiration to the crew that kindness could yield strength. Facing the rival once more, Harlan felt empowered. "We've turned toward something new," he declared. "This isn't a game. This is life, ours to redefine." His rival struggled with the weight of expectation. The tension crackled as Harlan maintained his ground. The gang around him had grown, transformed, while remnants of the old identity flickered in the rival's eyes. "Let's make a real deal then," the rival replied, the bitterness in his tone fading. "How about a follow-up on this kindness? Show me this isn't just talk." Harlan nodded, feeling a sense of destiny firm within him. "We'll hold a community day together, inviting everyone. Let's show what can happen when we unite through respect." In that moment, Harlan not only solidified his own growth, but opened the door for his rival to embrace an unfamiliar path. As the conversations evolved amid the onlookers, Harlan discovered what he truly had achieved. Not just a win in the face of challenge, but a true metamorphosis in the souls around him. He felt pride surge, validating every effort he had made thus far. Each individual story shared at those meetings had revealed that vulnerability, creativity, and kindness held the true essence of strength. On the final
day of reckoning between him and the rival, Harlan felt whole in his commitment. He had conquered the demons of his past, proving to himself that leadership was a journey of transformation, not domination. With the challenges ahead, he embraced the urgency of ongoing growth, understanding the responsibility it brought. "I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and this," Harlan gestured to the crowd, "this is just the beginning." Solid confidence enveloped him as he realized he no longer just wore the mask of a biker. He wore the armor of a leader, nurturing bonds of compassion while reshaping what it meant to truly be a part of a community. As he stepped into an uncertain future, Harlan knew one thing for sure. He had found his true self among the chaos, and he was resolute in continuing to prove that kindness could reshape their world, one act of courage at a time. Thank you for being part of this transformative journey. You need to subscribe now to keep supporting these exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the message of change. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the power of personal overcoming stories.